Carrying on with a blank workbook, I would like to introduce you to something called the autofill feature. But before we get started with that, there's just a little something I need to share with you. And this is a problem that affects most new users to Excel. If you come across any cells that are full of hash markings, this is just Excel telling you that your data does not fit inside of its cell. To quickly remedy this, you can just come up to the top right-hand side of the column and double click. You can also adjust it manually if you like. Then the data that's hidden behind the hash markings will be revealed. There's no data behind these hash markings because I just typed them in, but in a real-world scenario, you will have that data there. I believe Excel does this just to stop you from getting false readings from the program. So what is autofill? Well, this is Excel's pattern recognition and implementation system. It was introduced to Excel 2010 and is still with us today. So to give you an example of autofill, also known as flash fill, if I put a 1 in here and a 2 in here, then selects both of these values, then comes to the bottom right-hand side, and just when I get my black cross cursor, click, hold, and drag to the right. As you can see, Excel gives me 1 to 10. If you do this, and all you end up with is just 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 all the way along, then you may have to visit the autofill options here, and then just make sure that fill series is selected, because it might be on copy cells. So basically you can go up or down in any interval of number you like. So we'll put a 10 in here and a 17 in here. 17 minus 10 is 7, so we're going up in sevens. Let's go into the hundreds. As you can see, I'm using the same procedure each time. I'm just coming down to the bottom right-hand side, get that black cross cursor, click, hold, and drag to the right, and you can see it's working. Like I said, you can go down as well. So if I put a 10 in here and a 7 in here, select both these values, same procedure again. I'm going down in threes. We're now going to move on to custom lists. So I'll give you a quick example of a basic custom list that should exist by default in Excel. But if it doesn't work for you, don't worry. I'll show you how you can create your own custom lists in a moment. If I type in Monday here and use autofill straight away, you can see we get the days of the week. And of course, this works with the months of the year. And it will also work for the abbreviations as well. So if I type in MON for Monday, now this is something I'll show you how to turn off in a moment, but basically when I typed in Monday, Excel thought I was trying to type in Monday. So all I'd have to do at this point is just press enter, and I would have the word Monday. But all I want are the first 3 letters, so I'll just delete the rest. And I'll type in January. And as you can see, it's trying to autocomplete as well. So here are my 2 abbreviations for the days of the week and the months of the year. I'll select both these values. I'll come to the bottom right-hand side, same procedure again, click, hold, and drag to the right. And you can see how all of those have filled in. By default, these should exist in Excel, these custom lists here. But you can also add ones that you want. For instance, I have Montag, which is Monday in Deutsch, also known as German. I input this one myself. I also have the days of the week in Hindi. And, well, that's it. I've only created 2 custom lists myself. So I'll show you how to create a custom list now. First of all, come to File. Then come down to Options. Click on Advanced. And before we create a custom list, if you remember earlier, these 2 abbreviations here were trying to auto-complete. If you don't like this feature, here within the editing options, just check off Enable Autocomplete for cell values and automatically flash fill. If you do that, then that feature will go away. So what you want to do now is just scroll down to the bottom of this window And here we have an option called Edit Custom Lists. So here are the 4 default custom lists that exist. And you can see they're actually grayed out here, so we can't actually edit them. But here are my 2 custom lists that I created myself, the days of the week in Deutsch and the days of the week in Hindi. Let's create a new custom list. And you can do that just by clicking on New List here. And all you have to do is just type in one line at a time. So something like that. And then once you're finished with your list, you can just click on Add. And then click OK. And then OK again. Then you can try it out. So I'll type in my fake Monday here. Use autofill, and you can see how that worked. So that's a pretty handy feature, especially if you use Excel in a different language and you want to create some custom lists in the language that you want. At this point, you should have this sort of random collection of data within an Excel spreadsheet. If you don't worry. I'm just going to show you a few more things with this data before deleting most of it. So the first thing I'd like to do is just select the whole spreadsheet, and you can do that just by clicking on this arrow up here at the top left. And now you can apply any settings you want, but all I want to do is apply some center alignment formatting. So I'll click on that option here, and that's it. So as you can see, some of the data doesn't actually fit inside of its cell. So for instance, we have Wednesday here, Donnerstag here, and Wednesday here, and there's probably a few other examples as well. To remedy this, you may already know that you can come up to the top right-hand side of the column and double-click, and that will sort that out. But there's a few other things you can do when you have multiple columns with these issues. For instance, I can select the first column like this, hold down Control and select the other columns I want. So it'd be this one here and this one here. Now all I have to do is double click on the edge or in between any of these, and they'll all get adjusted to the correct size. Something else I could do is I could select the first column like this, hold down Shift, go to the last column, and I can double click in between any of the columns or right at the end, or I can come to the Format drop down here. And here you have an option called Auto Fit Column Width. If you click on this, the width of all of the columns are adjusted to the exact size that is needed. So what I'd like to do next is select the negative values here and also the custom lists below, and I'll press delete. And I'm going to delete most of this here. So I'll select it and press delete. All I want are 2 columns of data here. To move data around in a spreadsheet, first of all, you select it, then hover over any of the 4 edges of the selection, and click, hold, and drag, and you can move your data around. I'll just select this data here and put it beneath this, and I'll select it all. With this selected, you can see we have 3 pieces of information shown to us down here at the bottom right. We have an average for our numbers. We have a count, which tells us how many cells have values inside of them. And we have sum, which is of course the total. When it comes to this feature, if you left click on any of these options, so what I'll do is I'll just click on sum here and put my cell here. Your cell could go anywhere, but it's logical to put it here. And then you click on paste, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl+V. You can quickly and efficiently paste in the total for the figures above. This is pretty good, but if you change any of the numbers, so I'll change this one into a 13 and press enter, you can see how the answer doesn't update, which means it's no longer accurate. In this situation, it would probably be best to use a function. You can also use a formula, and if you're wondering what the differences are between those two, don't worry, that's something you'll learn about as you go through this course. But like I said, a function would be useful here, and in particular, the auto sum. So I'll just leave my cell here, even though technically it could go anywhere in my spreadsheet. but it's logical to put it here. So with my cell here, I'm going to come to AutoSum up here. Depending on your version of Excel, it may not say AutoSum, and you'll only be presented with the icon itself. But in any case, if you click on AutoSum or the icon, or you come to this drop down here and click on Sum, because they both do exactly the same thing. So just click on Sum here. What Excel tries to do is it tries to predict what it thinks I want added up. But if for any reason, if it's not correct, you can just click, hold and drag over some other data within your spreadsheet. But I'll just put it back to where it was. Here is my answer. Now, if I change any of this data here, so I'll change this 2 into a 46 and press enter, you can see how the answer changes. With the answer selected, I can see that it is actually a sum function. And I can see this up here in what is called the formula bar. I can also double click on the function to reveal it for what it is, which of course is a sum function. And at this point, I could resize this blue boundary box here, and I can also move it around just by click, holding and dragging on any of the 4 edges. What I'm going to do now is just select this data here, and I'm going to use autofill just to fill in 4 columns of data. As you can see, each of the cells have just been duplicated for each of the rows. But what I would like to do is make some of these columns a little bit more unique. So I'll just change this into a 12, this into an 89, and this into a 32. So now each of the columns is unique. There is a shortcut for the sum function, also known as AutoSum, and the shortcut is Alt equals or Alt plus, because equals and plus are both on the same button. I'll use that shortcut now. And you can see how a sum function has come to life. At this point, I can just check to make sure the selection is correct, and I can see it is. So all I have to do is press enter, and here we have a sum function. One thing you can do with functions and formulas is you can copy and paste them. So with this function selected here, I'll use the keyboard shortcut Control-C to copy it. I'll put my cell here and use the shortcut Control-V to paste it in, and then I'll press Escape to get rid of this selection here. Now I can double click on this just to make sure that the right range of data has been selected, and I can see it has. So what's happening here is something called relative referencing, and we'll be learning about the different types of references at the beginning of the next section. But basically, with this function here, the selection is directly above the function. So when I copied and pasted it across, the selection moved as well. This selection is also directly above the function itself. That's probably the best explanation I can give right now, but you will learn about the different types of references, like I said, at the beginning of the next section. So what I would like to do now is add up these other 2 columns here, but I don't want to use a fresh sum function, and I don't want to copy and paste them. So what I'm going to do is select this function here, and I'm going to use autofill to quickly and efficiently fill in these 2 cells here. So that's something else you can do. But to do this even faster, you could select these cells here and use the keyboard shortcut Alt equals, and they'll all get done at the same time. You could also select all of these cells here and use the same keyboard shortcut. And as you can see, all of the figures to the left have been added up. Let's just take a look at a few of the other options available within the AutoSum dropdown. We have average, count numbers, max and min. All of these work exactly the same as the sum function. It's just that they give a different answer. And also another thing, there is no keyboard shortcuts for any of these. It's only with the sum function itself. Let's take a look at average. I'll click on that option. I can see the selection is correct, so all I have to do is press enter. Let's move on to the next one. Count numbers will count the number of cells with numerical values inside of them. Then we'll move on to max, which will tell you what your largest figure is within your data. And then finally we have min, which of course is the smallest figure within your data. Okay, so there's just a few more things to do with this data. First of all, I want to change all of these figures into US dollars. So to do that, you can first of all just select them. Right click, come down to Format Cells. And then this window will appear. This is a window you use quite a lot in the program, so it's worth remembering what the keyboard shortcut is. And the shortcut is Control-1. So first of all, just make sure your data is selected and you can use that shortcut. To convert into currency, within the number tab, you want to come to currency. Then in the symbol dropdown, you have access to pretty much every currency that's available. The one I want, like I said, is the US dollar. So that would just be English United States dollar here. So I'll click on this and I'll click OK. And you can see how they've all been converted now. Then I'll select these figures here, which are basically like totals. I'll use the keyboard shortcut Control-B to make them bold. And the last thing to do is just to give this data a nice little title. So I'll select these cells here, click on Merge and Center because I want one larger cell. That'll be my title there. I'll click off and then back on. And then I'm just going to apply some basic font settings. So that would just be upscaling the font size by 2 points. I'll make it bold. Then I'll come to the fill color. And I'll just choose this light blue color here. Then I'll apply a border of some kind. Let's go for outside borders. All right, well, that's our data there. Now we're going to move on to a small exercise.